Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Hassan here. Where do I start now? That's the problem. To be honest, this video here, excuse me, I was thinking about it for a couple of days and I'm not still 100% sure. We'll see whether this will actually be getting online or not. If you're looking at it, it means that it got online. Okay, so anyway, I want to talk about Tasawwuf. I want to talk about Qigong. I want to talk about the Fitra, the defeating one's nafs, or ego, as some people would call it, and to get close to Allah, and Taoism. Okay, excuse me. Now let me see where to start. It's really, I was thinking to make a script for this video, but I felt if I made a script, it won't be the same. I am that kind of person, I just need to get started and just start rambling, and then sometimes something good comes out of it, and sometimes it doesn't. Well, we'll see how this goes. Anyway, let me first say that I've been studying Tasawwuf for almost, or maybe 25 years, studying in sense of starting about 26 years maybe, reading some texts on Tasawwuf, different texts from mostly the Sadli Tariqa, Sadli Dakawi Tariqas, some Moroccan text from some Moroccan sheikh that was translated to English, and was really intrigued as a new Muslim, or relatively new Muslim. So I became a Muslim 28 years ago, so I had been Muslim for a couple of years. So I started reading these books on Tasawwuf, and yeah, it just rang something. It just made sense to me anyway. I know some people, they think that it's a fitna, or it's a shirk, or bid'ah, or different, depending on who you're talking to. Sects, some people call it like sectarianism and stuff like that. But the fact is, it's a traditional part of Islam, and it's just not for everybody, and that's fine. For me, I believe it's for me. I couldn't dream to be without it. And yeah, I'm maybe not the biggest expert on Tasawwuf, for sure I'm not. But after 26 years, I would say 24 years following a sheikh. The first couple of years I was looking for a sheikh and just kept reading about it, but in the end I was following a sheikh, and the last sheikh that I'm following, which is Sheikh Muhammad al-Yaqubi, been following him for a little over 3 years now, and alhamdulillah, it's great for me, inshallah. Anyway, I learned a lot. I spent some time in Morocco, getting a chance to be close to the sheikh and to some of the gatherings in UK. And I learned a lot during that time. And I have a really extensive library of text on Tasawwuf, or Sufism you could call it, although that is a name that has been a little bit destroyed in some way, because there are some people calling themselves Sufis who are not even Muslims. So it's like, what is Sufism? Anyway, Tasawwuf is the science of purification, or getting close to Allah through self-discipline, mostly defeating our nafs, so on. So I have a bunch of texts that are really good. Some of the really, really early texts, like Al-Tusi, Surawandi, and so on. Some of those really, really early texts. Some of the first text that was written on that subject. And I have some very, very relatively new texts. Even some texts that might not be so much a manual, but simply to get some idea about what Tasawwuf is, and that I can really recommend. So, and some new translations, obviously. But my point is this, that personally, besides being a Muslim for quite some years, and and being a follower of a student of Tasawwuf, follower of a Sheikh for a couple of decades plus, I have also been following martial arts as a student, as a teacher, as a researcher even. I research a lot about the history of martial art and so on. And the last couple of decades as a practitioner of Eastern medicine, mostly Chinese medicine. And through the Chinese medicine, I became a student of Qigong, and now a teacher of Qigong, although it's something that you will always be a student of. You will never stop being a student as long as you're alive. It's just like Tasawwuf. Somebody might even become a sheikh, but they're still technically a student as long as they are in this dunya here. You're still a student, even though you might be being a sheikh with a lineage, isnad, and you have thousands of followers. You had a sheikh at some point, and if he's still alive, you're still following him, even though you have your own followers. So it's something that you never quite complete in this life. So you might attain a certain level of closeness to Allah, and we do have some examples in the history of Islam of people who have reached an amazing level, like Al-Ghazali and Abu Hassan al-Shadili, which is the founder, of course, of the Shadili Tariqa. We have some of these great saints, and you might be a saint, but you're not a sheikh, or you might be a sheikh, but you're not a saint, because those two things are different roles. You can be both as well. You might obtain sainthood in Tasawwuf, but you don't take followers, so technically you're not a sheikh in terms of being a guide for others. And there have even been examples of some of the Sufi sheikh that had contemporaries who was also maybe students of the same sheikh as those shuyukh would have been, and they even reach a higher level than the sheikh, even though the sheikh is fully competent to be a guide and so on. There has been some examples of that, but they chose not to be a guide for others for whatever reason, and Allah knows best. And certainly those people know why they did what they did, what they made those choices. Anyway, let me cut to the chase here. As a practitioner of Chinese medicine and Eastern medicine, and also as Islamic medicine, and as a student of Tasawwuf, you get a certain insight. That means that I, by the grace of Allah, have seen some things that during my study, because even though I'm not a guide of Tasawwuf, I'm not a sheikh, certainly not. I know there are students on a higher level than I am, for sure. Many students from my present sheikh and my previous sheikh. I know I have seniors in the tariqah who have been longer and who are more dedicated than I am. However, I might see some things that they did not see. For whatever reason, they might not need to see it. But with my study in Qigong, and Qigong is connected with Chinese medicine, and Chinese medicine is connected to Taoism, or Taoism, or however you want to pronounce it, is usually spelled Tao, and ism, of course. And it's a practice, or spiritual practice, or religion, depending on how you define the term religion, that's about 4,000 years old. Yes, excuse me. And to some extent, even Buddhism is somehow connected with these practices at the same time as at different times through the history. The Chinese medicine and the Chinese spirituality have been influenced, especially by Buddhism and Taoism. And as a practitioner of Qigong, I have looked into Taoism after I became a Muslim. At that time, it was around the same time that I took up a more deep study of Qigong and Chinese medicine. Let me see how I can best explain this. I was not looking for another message. I was not even thinking about this whole thing from a spiritual aspect at all. This was more related to, first of all, the martial arts, because there are different types of Qigong. There are what we call martial arts Qigong. There are what we call spiritual Qigong. There is scholar Qigong, and there are medical Qigong. So there are these 4 types of Qigong, and that's a little bit, it has the same core, but how it's practiced and how it's applied is a little bit different, and to some extent maybe very different. And I was looking at it more from a martial arts aspect in the beginning, and then when I started getting into the Chinese medicine, and especially when I started practicing the Chinese medicine, I was looking into the medical Qigong. At no point was I really looking at the pure spiritual Qigong, because I'm, as a Muslim and as a follower of Tasawwuf, why would I even be interested in that? You know, I didn't see any reason to have interest in it, so I didn't. And then as I got more knowledge of Tasawwuf, I got a more a more complex image of the process of the learning process and the spiritual stations, you know, where I, even though I might not have reached a very high station, because, and certainly I have not, not at all, but you know, even though you might be on a low station, you can still get an idea, at least some people can get an idea about what are those other stations that are available theoretically in terms of your progress, where you could reach. Especially if you study as much on Tasawwuf as I have done, you can get a picture. Some people anyway can, especially, you know, as studying the Chinese medicine and so on, you get a certain understanding of things that is not necessarily logical, and is not something that is from a westernized scientific viewpoint is not making any sense, but somehow you can still see the idea. It's not easy to explain this, so that's why I wasn't even sure I wanted to make this video. But anyway, let me just carry on anyway. So let's see if I dare to post it with all the critics that are online these days. Anyway, so I was in Morocco about a little bit more than 3 years ago, spending some time there, and mostly I was in itikaf, you could call it, you know, although it wasn't in the masjid. I was in the Zawiya, in the future Zawiya. It was only for a short term that it was actually the Zawiya, that place. But for me it was because I was there and was basically spending the nights in study and in dhikr, and alhamdulillah, it was great experience. And it, as a still practicing the Qigong at that time, for both the martial arts Qigong as well as the medical Qigong, not the scholar Qigong and not the spiritual Qigong, but with those two things, practicing this and feeling that somehow it fits, and it gave me something. They have this saying that, I don't know if it's a saying, but they have the concept in Tasawwuf that you can reach some openings. There are some openings that can happen during your journey on Tasawwuf, and there are small openings and big openings. There has been some examples of somebody who who are not following Tasawwuf at all, and they met the Sheikh, and like a blink of an eye, boom, they got like the whole thing just clicked, and by Allah's mercy and grace, they just became enlightened, until they were in that instant were like the Sheikh, basically. Of course, this is really rare. I have not experienced this, I should mention. But there are some small openings and bigger openings that you could get during this time, and I do believe that I managed, astaghfirullah, I can say I managed, because that means that I take credit for it, because there's no credit other than with Allah. But I was blessed with some openings during that time. I didn't appreciate it enough, or may Allah forgive me if I didn't. But something happened a couple of times during this about 5 months that I was spending there, and and I was actually planning to stay for a long time, for some years in Morocco, but because of family issues and business issues, I was basically ripped back out of Morocco and basically kicked to Indonesia by circumstance, and Allah, decided for that to happen. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Anyway, so I kind of got out of touch with that time, in a sense of I was suddenly so busy in the dunya and with all these things that I wouldn't say that I lost those 5 months, but it was kind of, how can I say, on the back burner, or on the, what do you call it, like it was there. I had it when I thought back, when I had my spiritual moments a couple of times in the Ramadan, the last 2 Ramadans, 3 Ramadans since. We just passed the 3rd Ramadan since, let me see. Yes, 4th Ramadan was just passed now. So each Ramadan I have some, you go out, you spend some night time, in Ramadan, and when it came back to me, some of those things that, there's inspiration, or, so, but then, you don't get a chance to really, get into it. So Ramadan finished, back to reality, right? The other reality, not the real reality, and then back to family situations, business problems, all of these things, and so on and so on. And with my martial arts still keeping going on, and the Qigong, and I never stopped Qigong, but the spiritual never came for the Qigong side. It was just Tasawwuf, struggling and understanding the whole. I mean, I don't know, of course, what is your knowledge of Tasawwuf, but I mean, you probably know that it has a purpose, and the purpose is to get close to Allah until you reach Allah, basically. Either in this world or in the next, and it takes a lot of self-discipline and dedication to control your nafs, because it's your nafs that gets you, entangled in the dunya and gets you distracted from what is your real one purpose in this dunya, which is ibadah, right? So, all right. So, I mean, I'm assuming you know this already. So it's like, there are some, if you read the different books on Tasawwuf, you will see that those stories, there will be some stories about, what they went through, the trials, tests, and all of these things, and their openings. They were explained a little bit about in this book or that book, and so on. So it gives you a kind of like an image, just like when you're reading some book. All right, it's a good, well-written book, whether it's a drama or whatever, biography. You read it, and in your mind, as you go on from page to page, you visualize it, you see it just almost like a movie in your head. If you understand that idea, if you have a habit of reading books, you probably have this experience. And as you read the books on Tasawwuf, to some extent you will get the same thing. You will imagine Hasan al-Basri, radiallahu rahimallah, and those, what is her name, the great female saint, Allah. Boom, it's just gone sometimes. Names, I'm terrible with names. Anyway, so you, when you hear these stories, you get an image, right? And it when you see those, and then you hear how they were so close to Allah, and some of the things that happened when they meet each other, meet the other saints, one saint meet another. There's a lot of things. Anyway, I gotta try and keep this short. So anyway, not long time ago, since I'm now teaching Chinese medicine online, and teaching Qigong, and then during my refreshing, all the theoretical knowledge, and like who did this and who did that, at this time of history and so on, looking back at of those masters of Qigong and so on, and then going through some of my recorded lectures from some of my own teachers, or those people that I received some material from, even though I might not have met them in person, but some books, there are well-written books on Qigong on that subject that you can learn a lot from. If you already have a teacher, you can still learn from this book or that book by other teachers of Qigong. Anyway, just like medical textbooks, you might not have access to the person who wrote the book, but if you have a teacher of any kind of medicine discipline, you can learn a lot from these textbooks. Obviously, that's how people learn in universities. But anyway, so okay, I thought it was our little kitten there crying. All right, so I was looking back in that, and then one of those masters of Qigong that I learned a lot from is Yang Wing Ming, Dr. Yang Wing Ming, from who I think he's staying in Canada at the moment, or US. He travels around, but I think he is in Canada. Anyway, is it Toronto? Could be. I forget now. It's not important. Anyway, I noticed that. By the way, he has some very, very good lectures, DVD lectures on Qigong, where he will explain some of these things that I'm just not capable of explaining properly, because that's what he does. He's like, that's the one thing he's doing, while I'm doing many, many different things. So he's much better at talking about it than I am. Much better. Anyway, so I noticed some time ago that through his publishing, he has published a whole bunch of books on Qigong, on different types of like Shaolin Kung Fu, White Crane Kung Fu, and and some different things. Some of them is from him. He wrote it and he published it. Some of it is other masters of different things, different disciplines. But I noticed that he had also sanctioned a study on Taoism, one famous textbook on Taoism, and I didn't get it. I got a PDF and looked through it a little bit to understand that Taoism, because of the connection of what happened to become Chinese medicine, acupuncture, the herbalist, the yin-yang, 5 elements, and qi, and all of those things are rooted deeply in Taoism, and especially Qigong, okay? And although the Buddhists came on later on and added some ideas to that, but reading about it basically made me understand something, and Allah knows best, obviously, but it seems from that knowledge that I got and that has been documented through 4,000 years, it's very likely that one of those prophets, as you know, in the Quran is mentioned some of the names of the prophets, salam, like Nuh and Yusuf and Isa and so on. There are some we know and some we don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if the original Taoism started with a prophet, because there are so many similarities. Just like if you look in Hinduism and many other religions, you can see some, if you go back to the earliest scriptures they have, you will see something that, maybe they messed it up later on for whatever reason, just like people have done with Christianity. There might not be much originality in it, but if you look in the what do you call it, Tao De Jing, or whatever how you pronounce it, the book on Taoism, you will see that it's amazing. Actually, it's quite significant. Some of the principles, really, it's one of the things that we look at in Islam is the Fitra, and which is where we should be, except we are not. Okay, and that's the Tao, the Fitra, because you have a Fitra, I have a Fitra. What is the original of mankind, the Fitra of man and woman? But we also have a Fitra of nature. We have the Fitra of animals are basically following their nature, and that's their Fitra. At least when they haven't been, mistreated or something that happened to make it different from the natural, because some animals today, because of the impact on environment and other things, they're animals doing something that is against their own nature or their own fitras. But basically, we live in the fitra in to some extent, but we are not connected to our fitra. And it's the same as the Tao. If you look at the Tao, you will see, you will see that that's the same point. This is, that's where Fitra is basically your nature, and Taoism or Tao is your nature. So, and then when you look at how the Tao is explaining the connection to be, following your Fitra or your Tao or your nature, it's very Islamic, very, very, very Islamic. Okay, of course there might not be things like formalities such as you pray 5 times a day, because people didn't do that back in those days, right? And fasting and Ramadan, we have certain things. But if you look at the principles of the wisdom and the justice, is amazing. Is you will be shocked if you look into it. And I'm not recommending you to go in and study Taoism, because learn your deen properly first, okay? And I hope I'm learning my deen properly too. I just happened to look into these things because it's connected with my practice as a medical doctor, doctor of Chinese medicine, Islamic medicine, and so on. So I see that need for me to understand that background, to be understanding clearer the medical Qigong and so on, and the acupuncture even and so on. So so I was seeing this, and it started to, okay, that was interesting, and I see so many parallels and so on. And then something happened that made me look into the spiritual Qigong. Yes. And how the spiritual Qigong actually is working on the balance, the yin and yang, okay? And that's the Fitra, okay? That balance, and this is interesting, there are so many Islamic references to that balance, the light and the dark, and the good and the bad. That's a balance, okay? And this is the yin and the yang, and that's the Fitra. I hope I'm not upsetting somebody by mentioning these things, but take it as you can, okay? But yes, I was seeing this really amazing. Anyway, so I started looking into this spiritual Qigong and how it was so similar to Tasawwuf, and wondering what's going on here. How is that, excuse me, how is that possible that, that if you get a good view of Tasawwuf, if you really get a good insight in the practical aspects and the struggle, and, it's like the difference between that, if you look at following a sheikh and doing zikir and so on, if you look at that and then look at the spiritual Qigong and the practice, your goal is very, very similar. There is no aspect that Allah is not in the aspect of it. The Fitra is the what do you call it? The Tao, the nature to catch that. The only thing that is missing is Allah, basically. Okay, so you might ask, why would I be interested in that if, I can just get that what Tasawwuf? Well, the thing is, and that's where I'm working on, really doing a good research and practice this spiritual Qigong, because where the Tasawwuf is very much more directed towards Allah, and it's based on fasting and doing zikir at night, and basically zikir is a huge part of it. Of course, you might have a hadra, and you might do the khalwa with the sheikh and so on, but it's very much based on this narrow, you might say, and don't misunderstand. It doesn't mean that it's limited in any way, because it's enough. It's enough for most people if they can do it. But the problem is, can they do it, right? So, and that's what I want to come to. So anyway, so you have this narrow practice that is really, the main thing is zikir, doing a weird from your tariqah, for example, reading Quran, doing extra prayers, doing extra fasting, and things like that, and also maybe reading stories or getting stories told. Like there are some manuals, like Imam Buzidi and Ibn Ata'illah Iskandari and others who wrote some very good manuals, but it's mostly a story that will make you understand your relationship to Allah and so on. So it's a very theoretical in terms of learning to understand it, and then applying it through mostly doing dhikr and so on, and the other forms of ibadah. But that's pretty much where it's at, which is fine, okay? But if you might have been in tariqah like me for a couple of decades, and who knows where you are at in terms of your state, or your station for that matter. And the fact is, there are millions of people following different tariqas with a varied experience and benefits. And the fact is, what I'm seeing from
2:00
okay,
p.m.
all right, it's 2:00 p.m. Sorry. Anyway, so where was it? Yeah. So the thing I saw in the Qigong, in the spiritual Qigong, is actually a way to help to get that connection, to polish, you could say, your physical tools. I don't know what to call it really, because the thing is, through the spiritual Qigong, through the practice, the physical, the mental aspects of the spiritual Qigong, you connect the two brains. If you don't know, then do a little research, okay? Because I don't want to spend another hour explaining how there are two brains, okay? And then we have the vessels, okay? And we have the rivers, okay? These are terms to understand how the Qi is working in your body. And if you don't think that Qi is a reality or something that really works, then science have already accepted it, okay? They have already, like in the, what was that? In the 70s, or was it the 80s? 70s, I think it's 1975, Nixon went to China and witnessed an open heart surgery where the patient was awake and talking to the doctors while he was being operated. This is not some story. This is, they have videos or film. They took it all on video, and there are many pictures in many medical textbooks that shows this and describe this. And the fact is, it has a higher rate of success, at least back in those days where open heart surgery was kind of experimental, while today it might be more common. But in those days, they were not putting the patient into a coma to operate on the heart. And how did they manage to do that without any kind of sedative that would knock the patient out? They simply used acupuncture needles in the right location to stop the Qi, okay? Because if those signals, that's what the Qi is doing, is basically, if I'm doing like this with my hands, this is Qi. Okay, you might look at it from a mechanical. There are my neurons in my brain will make a decision, like I'm doing all of these things with my hand right now. Okay, I didn't have to think, oh, let me do this movement. All right, I don't have to make that decision intellectually. I can just do whatever, right? And as fast as I can speak, I can do these kind of movements. But the thing is, I can also do the opposite, meaning that I can stop, I can put a couple of needles in different locations in my arm, and no matter how much I want to, I can't move my hand at all. Okay? So maybe you think that this is all about the mechanical, okay? But from the scientific point of view, that's impossible. And yet it's possible. You can still do it, okay? I've got to be careful I don't go out on talking about the science and all of this, because then it will be a very long video. It's already 38 minutes, so sorry. Okay, anyway, my point is that the spiritual Qigong, it has a better, for a Tasawwuf point of view, the spiritual Qigong has a better, rather than the medical martial arts and scholar Qigong, it has a much better use, because the use is that you fine tune the flow of Qi, okay, to the between the two brains, which are connected with your what do you call it, with your in your back, through the nerves in your what do you call it, in your okay, you see, it's like there's so many technical things that is really, I gotta remember to say this and that, so it just scrambles a little bit. But anyway, there's a nerve connection between your brain and the other brain, which scientists have already recently, not that long time ago, have actually acknowledged the fact that we have two brains, okay? And one is more for storage and memory, all right, while the other brain is more for acute interactions and and you can call it, there is two parietal orbits, parietal orbits, which one is in right inside here, and the other one is basically close to the end of your backbone, okay, and they have two functions, okay, and they interact. They are very depending on each other. Okay, I hope I live a little bit of time before I get disturbed there. So that's the whole connection is there. So through this practice and through the physical Qigong, where you can either if you are in a too overactive state, you can direct the qi to calm your heart and your blood pressure down, okay, and you can work the qi from inside to go outside and vice versa, because the qi is, of course, as we know, pretty much is scientifically known now, that we have an interaction from a universal interaction, and we have one that is directly from nature as well. So we have what we call the heavenly qi, the internal qi, and then we have the earthly qi, which is, of course, for example, when you're eating some plants, you will achieve some qi, and that's how you actually build your qi. It's very important. Besides the fact that it has carbohydrates and vitamins and minerals and all of those things, and fibers and fats and whatnot, it also have qi, and you can calculate that. This is like if you follow some of these lectures from Dr. Yang Wing Ming, he will explain some of those. He even have a calculation. You do this and this and this, and then this is how many calories. He's looking at it very much from a westernized scientific point of view as well, because he's a scientist as well as a Chinese practitioner of Qigong. So he's looking at this, and there's so many points of reference that he can give you that I don't even remember half of them. And if you need it, for me, it's not really relevant. It's just interesting when I hear it, because it makes me okay. Anyway, so here we come to the thing that's really very interesting, because two things I would say. The first thing is, it is well known from the spiritual master of Tasawwuf for hundreds and hundreds of years that eating animal products restrains the spiritual development. It actually slows it down. It's well known. And you can go into another debate. And, the Prophet ﷺ ate meat, and he did it rarely and for different reasons, and and he was a prophet, so even then, okay. Just like he also had, I think the most wives at one point was 9 at the same time, if I'm not mistaken, and you have to satisfy your wives, right? Let's not forget that you have a certain duty to make them happy, physically as well. And if you and I had 9 wives, it would make us sick, because the fact is, the more you have sexual intercourse, if you have it, that you can do without it, and that might be the best. And then the more you have a certain amount where it doesn't really inflict any damage. But then if you go above that, you actually have a damage to your health from having ejaculation of sperm, because it takes a great energy to create this sperm, and that comes from the chi. It's not just about eating a lot of intake a lot of calories, so therefore you can, no, it doesn't work like that. There's this whole life essence that is in the sperm. Okay, there's an essence of life in the sperm. It's created with a great physical, I don't want to say effort, because it's not like you're sitting there, oh, now I'm gonna create some sperm, but it physically it's effort, you could say it's an effort. So my point is that it's different. Anyway, so as I was saying before I went out on another tangent there, it's so you can see, maybe, I don't know if it makes any sense what I'm saying, so maybe it's all like you just have no idea what I'm talking about. I hope you get a little bit out of this, at least I'm trying to encourage you to find out what I'm talking about, at least, okay? And you can always inbox me or comment to the video or whatever. If I'm putting it online, I'm still, we'll see. Anyway, so there's the third eye. And in Tasawwuf, maybe there are people who don't realize it, they never heard about it, never read about it, but we are well aware of the development of the third eye. And don't think that, okay, with time you suddenly develop like this little thing, like another eye that's open and closed. But there is calling it a third eye is because it is something to do with spiritual insight. All right, and insight, sight is something, you have an eye, so you call it sight, right? I have sight if I'm not blind. So spiritually, you can see with the third eye. I hope that makes sense, okay? So the whole spiritual Qigong is to develop the third eye. So when you're doing this development of the third eye, somebody's coming. Just a second. Never mind, I'm doing a video right now. All right. Okay, so sorry for that. I had to open the door. Anyway, so as I was saying, so the spiritual Qigong is a practice of using the Qi, okay, by making physical certain exercises that will train you physically and mentally, because part of doing this, moving the Qi, is by controlling it with your brain. Yeah, actually, maybe it sounds a little crazy, but you can actually do that, all right? And that's what you train. And so, close the door, please. All right, so the cat doesn't run out. Anyway, yes, sorry, I get a little distracted there. So anyway, so that's what you're doing with the spiritual Qigong. You're training physically and mentally to develop the third eye, because the third eye, it's somewhat physical and it's somewhat spiritual. Oh, now she's crying there. Okay, I better make this shorter. Okay, so that's what you're doing. So if you imagine that you're already on a spiritual journey in Tasawwuf, to have that extra benefit. Okay, I hope you can hear what I'm saying. It's crying quite a lot. Okay, so you have this journey, okay, you're already on it. So if you imagine you had this tool, this amazing tool of Qigong that can calm you and increase your awareness and your focus, and this is actually also another way that you can achieve khushu' in your prayer. I hope I pronounced that khushu'. I hope I pronounced it correctly, but you can actually achieve a better level of khushu' in your prayer. Yes, it's, and this is one thing that even you're not in Tasawwuf or following Tasawwuf, every Muslim want to improve their khushu'. So at least that is something that you can improve, if not more than that. So you get an awareness and a focus that you can really, you're in the moment, you're in what you are doing. So if you are in prayer, you're in that prayer and you're not in something else. I don't know if you ever heard that hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was leading the prayer, and in the middle of the prayer, or at some point in the prayer anyway, I don't know if it was the middle, to be honest, he suddenly left. And then when he came back, they were asking him, "Hey, what happened? You just suddenly run off? What's going on?" He had to tell them that, he told them, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that he had some gold in his house, and he had to go and give it because it was in his mind. He didn't want it to take any part in his mind during that prayer. Okay, so this is khushu', right? So you are, doing this qigong, achieving, which is, you can see from some of the masters of meditation, even they're not Muslims or in Tasawwuf, they have a great focus to do amazing things like the Zen archery, where they are taking and they don't look at the target, and it's not about hitting the target even, but they can hit the target. They can hit it. They can hit a target. They can hit a, like a toothpick. You can put a toothpick, 30, 40, 50 meter away, and they will hit it without looking. All right, that's how precise they can be. Okay, and if you don't think that takes great focus, then you don't know what is focus. Okay, so, and they are doing that through meditation. Even itself, the archery, when they bring up the bow and then pushing the bow instead of pulling the string, because that's what they do, all right? When they pushing the bow, all right, so the arrow will fly, okay? That is for them part of the meditation, all right? So when you are sorry, I hope you can still hear me here. So when you are in that process of the Qigong, you are gradually, and at least I am, so you can choose to do it or not, but I'm gradually implementing the Qigong together with the Zikir. All right, so while in Qigong you might be sitting just focusing on the Qi itself, you can suddenly be focusing on that Qi flowing from the Tanchen to up through the back, or vice versa, depending on whether you are lowering or increasing, depending on the situation or what you need to do to create that balance. But there are so many noises here. Anyway, so yeah, as I see this application in through meditation and in Tasawwuf, maybe you have that. From your sheikh, you might have reached a level where your sheikh is telling you can sit down and you can do certain dhikr, almost like a meditation. Not just that you are doing like a long formula. You might be making dhikr with one name, Allah or Ya Latif or whatever it might be, and you're repeating this, and your sheikh is telling you, do this 50,000, 100,000, right? You're doing this, and then you're sitting and, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, or something like that. And then, your mind might be going, oh, what am I having for breakfast? What am I having for breakfast? But you're saying Ya Latif, but your mind is not saying that, right? Your heart is not saying that. Your mouth is saying it, right? So you might be in that situation, or another thing, or you might be better than that, and then you have another, but believe me, to some extent, you could be better. I'm pretty sure. Okay? And that, no matter where you are, that being better would be better through focus and awareness. Okay? And that's what I'm talking about here, that this Qigong, this spiritual Qigong exercise is like dynamite, it's like really, really amazing way of, it's like cheat sheet for being a better Sufi, right? If you can call yourself a Sufi, that's a term, we don't think we are Sufis, but we have aspiration to be Sufis, you might say, right? So this is a cheat sheet to become a Sufi, Some people think that if you're just following Tasawwuf, you're Sufi. Some people say, no, the Sufi is the one that we hope to become. So whichever it is, right, you will have a cheat sheet in a way, or a way to an extra way to get to the Olympics of Tasawwuf. Anyway, it's almost 1 hour now, so I will leave here. So if you are interested in this topic, contact me, and actually I have a course that I'm doing. If you are interested, and you don't have to, you can do your own research. But I'm having a course where I walk you through. I have already more than 20 years of Qigong experience, and teaching Qigong for almost as long, and as far as the medical Qigong is pretty much 20 years, and as far as the spiritual is relatively new, but it's pretty much the same as the other kinds of Qigong, but it's just another focus, and you can really adapt. If you are already 10-15 years in Qigong, you can probably learn this in a couple of weeks, but practice takes longer. You can know how to improve, but you have to actually practice to improve, if you get my drift. Okay. Anyway, so you can contact me if you're interested, and I will tell you a little bit more about the course. So until next time I come out with some crazy video like this, stay healthy, and may Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.